Good evening. Welcome to Sistabiz. Today is August 18th, and we are back. We've been away for a while. Welcome, viewers. My co-host Nicole Orr is here with me. Nicole, how you doing? It's been a few weeks. People haven't seen us in a while.
Well, they've been seeing me, just not here. But I've been out and about, but I've been good. How about you?
I've been pretty good. I'm excited to be back. Roughing it a little bit today, but I'm still here. So, yeah, there's a lot going on, but we want to stick to our topic that we thought we would discuss today. Just talking about Black women in business and personal. Are we really supporting each other? We hear that hashtag, and I've seen it a million times. Black girl magic, and then I see a lot of things about Black women supporting each other in general. But I want to know, we kind of wanted to dig into the topic of, are we truly supporting each other? Like really, really, or is it just something we're saying we're doing, and how important it is in the work world and in our personal lives to have actual support from other Black women. That's what we can address because we are all Black women. So we have a panel this evening of some strong, wonderful, brilliant Black women that I think are really good on this topic and will help us discuss this topic of, Black women supporting Black women, truly supporting Black women. So we have Ms. Linda Batts with us, joining us. And we have Nora Mitchell joining us this evening.
So,
hey. So I'm going to start this off. I did some research and saw lots of articles about Black women in the corporate world. And now that the pandemic is hitting, a lot of Black women are working from home. A lot of Black women don't want to return to work because they don't have to deal with a lot of the complexities that they usually deal with in the workplace. I found a lot of studies that said that Black women, of course, are the least supported in the workspace, in the corporate world. There's all these articles like the state of Black women in corporate America. It's pretty grim. A lot of the stereotypes that are put on us, the lack of acknowledgement for some of our accomplishments from the supervisors is mentioned as well. Just a number of things that Black women are challenged with at work. So I want to start off with Linda. What are your thoughts on the topic as far as Black women supporting other Black women in the workplace specifically? We'll start with the workplace.
Well, I thank you for bringing that topic to this discussion this evening. That is very important. I have found throughout my 35, 40-year career in the workplace that some of what we're talking about is going to be very culture specific. Having worked in the federal government, having worked in very distinct areas in the federal government, and then having retired and come back to Baltimore and assuming a position in Baltimore, I saw complete variances in the way sisterhood works in different environments. And in environments where excellence is supported, excellence makes for the corporate outcome, I see an opportunity where Black women have come together and supported and sustained one another for the ultimate goal. On the other hand, in Baltimore, my experience was quite the opposite. I saw an environment where that type of excellence was not replicated across agencies, and the thirst for women supporting one another, the energy behind it, the sisterhood, the collectivity just wasn't there. And I was extremely disappointed because Baltimore is my home. I've been born here, I was bred here, but yet I spent 35 years in Washington, and I got to see different dynamics just in a 40-mile radius in terms of how women support one another, how they compete against one another, and how they feel that the opportunity is only singular. It's not plural. They're looking through the lens of limitation and not through the lens of excellence and growth that can happen when we all achieve and when we all succeed. And so I can say that there's still a lot of work to be done here in the municipal side of government for Baltimore City, and that in other environments, I don't necessarily believe that it is 100% that women, and particularly Black women, are not thriving. I think that they are in certain industries, but it is industry and culture specific. And so we could probably be safe with the generalization. But when we talk to women at different agencies and across different sectors, we're going to find different experiences.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you have a similar background as me. I was with the federal government as a consultant for years, and then came to Baltimore City. And what a difference I saw. And Miss Nora, you're in Northern Virginia area, the DMV proper. But you have a little bit of insight and experience into some things going on in Baltimore City specific that Miss Batts brought up. What are your thoughts on, just the differences that you see?
Well, most of the differences that I see is that I'm not that familiar with Baltimore, really, because I've never actually worked there. But I would say, as far as like corporate goes, I'm very familiar with that. I think the workplace is like a microcosm of the larger society. And we bring unfortunately, a lot of the schisms to the workplace as Black women, as a group collectively. We have to deal with racism, we have to deal with sexism, colorism. A lot of times we're not allowed to connect with each other and support each other because those vibes are put out there. So you know that you want to mentor people who come in, younger Black women who come in, but there's a vibration that goes on. You're kind of told that that's not good. So you're pushed away from being able to do that. Baltimore is unique. It's a community. I think it's a great community. The problem that I see is that it's pretty much under attack. It's being gentrified. And so I don't know exactly about the workplace, but I do know that without community, we really don't have the system to support each other. It starts in the home, it trickles over to community, and then it ends up in the workplace. So how do you keep that going if your community is destroyed?
Right, Nicole, you want to get in here because you and I have a lot of discussions about our community work, things going on in the community, the challenges, what are your thoughts?
First of all, I love my sisters 100%. And I will definitely say is that I've encountered on the corporate side, and I also encounter now on the side where I'm more retail. And what I find is that I think that some of us look down upon one another, and I think that bothers me more than anything, because I know I've embraced it where people have come into my store not knowing that I'm the owner, and have tried to, I don't know, like belittle me in my own space, in my own building. And I have to reiterate to them, you know what I mean? And I don't know why we feel empowered by doing that, but you do see a lot of that. And it's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate, but I think it's systematic. I think it's a lot of what we've seen across and how we've been treated by others. We seem to take that and we decide that is appropriate. So I think it starts with each individual and correcting our own and knowing our own worth. So like when I see a sister, I try to make it my business to speak, to make eye to eye contact. And I think it starts with us. I mean, because it used to be a time where, I don't know her. I'm not going to speak to her. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to compliment. No, I'm not going to compliment. Now you have to be comfortable with yourself and know that it's really us against a lot of the world. And all we really have is each other at the end of the day. So I think it has to go back to knowing ourselves and trying to get ourselves into a spot, because you'll find that a lot of us, and I think it's a woman thing. I don't know if it's necessarily just a Black woman thing, but they'll just stop liking you. They won't even like you and don't even know you. Like, we don't have to agree on everything, but I find that people would not like you for no reason. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
because you don't like somebody that they like. That's childish.
Yeah, I've personally dealt with that. Yeah, it's kind of like cultish or clan or group or tribe behavior. If you get along with someone in this tribe and I don't like that person in that tribe, and it comes down to something I used to hear a lot growing up. Maybe it's the 80s or 90s. She's not all that, and you would hear that sometimes and be like, but do you know her? And these are things coming from other sisters. Like, what? I was always like, what does that mean? And why are you saying that? We don't take the time to really get to know each other personally on any type of level, and judgment is made immediately. Miss Bats,
One of the things that I was absolutely alarmed by was the absence of these affinities in Baltimore City. Coming from the federal sector, we had Black women law enforcement officer organizations, Black women bankers, Black women this, Black women that. And there were organizations that were developed locally and internally to bring women together. They were self-born, self-generated, and that's where the sisterhood and the support came from, that really gave strength to each other within an organization and helped lay the foundation for change. When I came to Baltimore, in one of the agencies where I worked, I was absolutely amazed at the pushback that I got when I brought a group of senior women together to talk about this sister speak, this collectivity we needed to have, this grouping that we needed to bring together, to put all of the pockets of talent that we had in one group so that we could all grow and learn from one another and be mutually supported. And there was resistance. There was who does she think she is coming in here telling us? Or, this wasn't my idea. Gee, I wish I had that as an idea, so I'm not going to support it. Or I just rather stay in my little pocket and not let anybody know what I'm doing or what my shortcomings are, so I'm not going to participate. So an effort that had such an excellent intent and many models of success throughout the industry, we couldn't penetrate the cultural nuances and idiosyncrasies that keep people down in an agency. And I've never seen a culture where it's okay for Black people to speak to Black people and degrade Black people and not support Black people as openly as I did in my experience in Baltimore City, being that it is a city that is 63% African American, where we should be excelling and loving on one another and supporting and sustaining one another and championing one another. I did not see that. And I was just absolutely left with a sheer sense of taxpayer and citizen and sisterhood disappointment. I really was.
So it's
I
almost
really
like
am.
a slavery mindset.
Well,
that we
that's
had.
what I was about to say. It is.
It absolutely, it's the Willie Lynch syndrome I saw
Mhm.
all over again. As long as we keep divided, we'll never come together and unite and be all that we can be. There's so much insanity that is welcomed and that is fostered and that goes unchecked. And I believe that agency leadership in Baltimore City that allows these kinds of environments to thrive and prosper because they know that they are these kinds of cultures that they're leading, they ought to be removed. They
Miss
ought to be
Betts,
removed.
Linda, do you think, and now I really was, Nicole, I wasn't talking about Baltimore, but I have to. So do you think that part of the problem is, what I saw when I was in Baltimore city government was a lot of insecurity. It was a lot of insecurity in themselves, and so those people tend to be, less willing to mentor, less willing to share information. Yeah, it was always kind of that, oh, well, we don't want that idea to go because it's that person and not me. Do you think it's part of the syndrome in the politics in Baltimore City is hire your friends, whether they're qualified or not? A lot of the people may not be qualified. A lot of the, unfortunately, Black women or whomever we're speaking of, the whole culture. Is it part of that? Hire your friends, and it's like, well, my friend hired me, or I'm connected to this person, not so much on my merit or my work, but people are just getting by because of who they know. And does that kind of feed into this, already kind of slave type mentality that some of us are still dragging with us? Is that why it's so much worse in Baltimore?
I think it is. I'm sorry, Linda, you go ahead.
No, please.
Okay.
Please,
no,
Laura.
I definitely think it is. My experience has been more in predominantly white, workspaces as opposed to predominantly Black. And so there's a lot of microaggression when it comes to Black people connecting. You walk in the door knowing that that's something that you're going to have to be comfortable in your own skin and stand up against. And sometimes with us, a lot of things are carried over from slavery. Sometimes with us, unfortunately, I hate to say this, we tend to almost thrive better under oppression. We know that we have to stand together in order to move forward and make it work, and then in what you're talking about, it's almost the opposite. But I don't know how you heal a group collectively as large as we are. And we need a healing in the psyche. And the only place I can see where that could be done is if we have our own spaces. We have private groups like what you talked about, Linda. We have other groups that we can get together, not necessarily in a church format, but in a format where professional women can come together, mentor younger women, connect with colleges, and do things like that. A lot of this is the remnants of slavery that comes against our psyche, that when we get together, we feel like we can't bond and we can't promote and support each other.
Absolutely. And I will also add, I'm really big on accountability. And so
Right.
I believe that in every agency, the person who's running the agency is ultimately held accountable, and the people whom he or she empower to supervise other people are to be held accountable too, along with the workforce. I am not aware of any type of sustainable, meaningful leadership training that has occurred in Baltimore City. Now, I was there for 2 years. And across industry, at least during a 2-year period, some type of meaningful colloquy, consortium of leaders getting together to talk about best practices, strengths, shortcomings, how we can grow, how we can be better. All of that is part of what makes an agency strong and what sends a signal out to the workplace that these are aspects that we value in the workplace. None of that happened during my time in Baltimore City. Mm-hmm. I'm quite certain that it probably still hasn't happened.
So how do the political leaders and agency heads expect in a city like Baltimore for someone that's unemployed, has been in the street all their life, to stop committing crimes and certain behavior and certain trauma that they always want to address, when they're not addressing it themselves in City Hall or within the agencies. They're not addressing the trauma, and they're not able to work as a team, but they expect, they expect the constituents to do this, and our leaders, or our political figures or our agency heads aren't doing that. It's very bad behavior, and it's very poor leadership. So we're putting all these resources in helping the constituents and lowering crime. When if you look at it, I see crimes being committed on the constituents' dime by elected officials and by agency heads. So that's trickling down, and it's creating a culture, and we can't even change that culture. And that, I would always say that, like, we can't fix what's going on in here. How can we fix what's going on outside the doors?
Well, what are your
There's old
default
business terms.
agencies? Go ahead, Linda.
No, absolutely
No,
not. Go ahead.
I was going to say, what are your default agencies? I mean, like, where do you go if you're having an issue? Do you go to the Human Rights Commission, EEOC? And if that's the case, are they doing the job that they're supposed to do? Are they providing the right oversight? Do they come? I don't think so. I mean, this thing is trickling down from the very top, and they're not doing what they're supposed to do. If you have a genuine case and you take it to some of these outside agencies to try to get something fixed, you're lost. If it's not a precedent setting case and you can't afford a lawyer, then you're just left out there.
And so permit me to speak with some degree of accuracy around that, because that's right in my wheelhouse.
Okay.
One of the things that I observed in Baltimore City was what I called the delayed cycle time in terms of processing complaints. If an employee comes with an issue and it takes almost a year to get an investigative report, just imagine the trauma and the potential retaliation and the potential for, just the uncomfortable aftermath that occurs when a case like that is lodged with the city. I am absolutely convinced that Baltimore City can do a much better job in terms of its processes. Victims of alleged internal workplace harassment or discrimination shouldn't be traumatized and penalized by having to wait an inordinate amount of time to get their issue addressed. And oftentimes, or at least in one particular agency, many of these investigations were being carried out by the office that actually helped perpetrate and sustain the policies and the environment that gave rise to the complaint. These are not new things that the city is just hearing about. These are aspects of the workplace that have been indoctrinated, that have been sustained, and it takes a federal withholding of funds or some kind of very high sanction against a city agency or against the city to have them go in and begin to check and dissect these processes and change their habits. But as it stands now, we don't have that. And there are better models of how to do business. I look at Baltimore City and I see sick buildings. I see old buildings. I see buildings where I couldn't even imagine having spent 2 years, let alone a whole career, just because they are not environmentally safe, or at least they don't appear environmentally safe. And they certainly are cosmetically unattractive. They're not places where I would want to work. And I say sick buildings foster sick behaviors, which fosters this greater insanity that we see across the city. So you have sick buildings, you have untrained leaders leading people and providing services throughout a city what do you expect in terms of the outcomes? What
Right.
do you expect
So,
in terms of the outcomes?
in Baltimore City, and I saw a lot in the federal government, Black women in powerful positions. They seem to behave a little better in the federal government because there is some accountability there.
Mhm.
There isn't any accountability in
A
Baltimore City.
little
So
more checks and balances, right?
right.
Mhm.
So there doesn't seem to be any checks and balances. And anyone knows that they've been watching the show long enough. For the first time in my life, I was supervised by a Black woman. And when you walk into it as a young Black woman, you see like all this Black woman, all this power. And I remember the Japanese delegation, delegation actually came to Baltimore City maybe a year and a half ago. And I met with them, and they were just so impressed that we had a Black female mayor at the time. And they were so impressed to meet with me as part of the minority business exchange. I met with them, and they talked about how women in their culture didn't run a lot of the businesses, and they didn't have a lot of the opportunities. And then to see a Black woman, it was very encouraging for them. But at the same notion, I was very proud of that and very honored to finally work under a Black woman after working, under white men for so long, but was the most disrespected. So by a Black woman. So Miss
Mhm.
Batts in Baltimore City, if anyone's watching that may be working there, we do have some folks that watch. Or in general, when you're at work and you're harassed or if you're a Black woman and it's a Black woman that's almost essentially discriminating against you. What do you do about that? How
Absolutely.
do you escalate that? I mean, because there's nothing in there. There's nothing in the rules that typically say, well, a Black on Black. It's a Black on Black crime. How do you address that?
So
Absolutely.
there's, I'm
And, and,
sorry.
and those claims are cognizable under the EEO rules. It is not uncommon for Black people to treat Black people differently than they treat others. In fact, it is not uncommon for Black people to treat Black people worse than they treat others of a different group.
Mhm.
But in some instances, there are Black leaders who treat everybody bad simply because they may not know how to lead. They may not have had any training or good training. And what we have to do is
Miss
understand
Bass, let's
whether
just
we
say some
have.
of them are just bad people, period.
Or they feel
There's
it's
no training to help
expected of them. Sometimes they feel it's expected. They're walking that line. You know what I mean? So either I persecute this person over here and, make their life miserable, and I find favor with the people over me, or else I'm in jeopardy. It's a going along to get along type thing. It's not right. It doesn't show integrity, or self-respect. But they do it, and they do it all the time. I came from a predominantly Black culture, born and raised in New York, born and raised in Harlem in the South Bronx, and came down here to a predominantly white environment, you know, and had to survive that. And I do say survive, you know, because it was the same, but I knew what I was up against. I mean, it was obvious to me what I had to fight. Now let's see. Sorry, it clicked off. But I knew exactly what I was up against and what I had to fight. But when you're dealing with a Black person, a lot of times we tend to want to go into HR, and we feel like if we're on the inside, somehow we'll be protected. But we're actually weaponized to be used against our own people, our own kind, because you're in HR and you're supposed to be representing not only the company, but the rights of the employees. And a lot of times that's not done, especially when the person is Black. And on paper and legally, it looks, well, you had a Black HR rep, you had a Black manager, you had a Black supervisor. So there couldn't have been discrimination. And the type of discrimination that we deal with, it's not recognized, and it has to be.
Wow. So
Absolutely.
yeah. Wow. So I guess it kind of goes back to what do people do? Like, is that that's still considered workplace violence?
Yes, definitely.
So there are ramifications for that. So I would encourage.
Hold
I
on,
mean,
Nicole. Hold
yeah,
on, Nicole. I'm gonna get specific. The comments of Tamara Brown are not the comments, or not the are not the comments of this network. So when I worked for Dana P. Moore, uh, Brandon Scott, who was the current mayor, saw her talk to me after answering one of his questions at the Board of Estimates. Saw her disrespect me in a way that you shouldn't in public or any employee. She now runs the Office of Equity and Civil Rights and Wage and all that. So please continue with your statement, but I just want you to know there really is no recourse. There's actually was award for that. Because we
well,
see the administration awarding and promoting or moving somebody into a position where, you know,
but
they're
see,
the ones conducting the violations.
my thing is that
Mhm.
when you know that you are going through, I think, situations like that, in my opinion, that's when you have to kind of resort to audio recording. I encourage anyone to, if that's what you have to do. Linda Tripp did it, and she set off a whole thing. You know what I mean? Do what you have to do, and because that tape will stand up, in court, because it is violence. And I think that it would be hard for them. I don't think it's illegal to wiretap. I don't think it's illegal to record a conversation,
I
and
think
and
in
that
Virginia it is without the
oh, okay,
person's consent. So you have to know
okay.
where you are.
Well, if they are beating me down by words, I
Hmm.
think that's consent, because you need to protect yourself. You know what I mean? It's like
I agree.
some type of instance. So I would just encourage anybody that's going through that to just start recording, because you got to protect yourself.
I've
Against
gone
those
to
types of people.
agencies with predominantly female employees, and I'll speak specifically to the Human Rights Commission. And it was a total setup. My situation at the time, they thought was a joke. I mean, they actually laughed about it. I got no results, no support. Now who do I go when I go above the Human Rights Commission? Where is it? By that time I was so burned out, you know, I mean, we should not have to get up every day and go into work and fight, and fight for our self-respect and our integrity and who we are. You know what I mean? We shouldn't have to do that, but we do. And personally, honestly, I think it begins in the home, and I think it begins in how you raise your children, how you teach them about not only Black history in this country, but Black history throughout the diaspora. I think we have to, so they get that type of pride and they know who they are as an individual, so that they honestly down the road don't sell out. And at the end of the day, it's about money. These people are all about the money.
You are
Can
correct.
you
You
hear me?
are correct. We lost you for a second there, Miss Bat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started naming names, and then our connection got a little crazy. You know how that goes. Yeah, that's a great comment. We did have a comment here, Nicole, that said you have to have consent. Also, Maryland, you can't just. It's not working for anybody. I wish we could.
But you know what? I'm saying don't give up. Stand your ground. You know, um, there's going to be changes. But if we don't stand, if we don't fight, then who's going to do it? And we have to do it for the people coming behind us. It's not always easy, and we take our licks, but we get some in too. You know,
Right, right.
we don't make it easy for them, and we have to do that.
So Black women in the workplace, we have to deal, like you said earlier, all the isms, and we do have
Hmm.
to deal with being sexualized, maybe by white and Black men. We
Yes.
have to deal with white women, and Nicole and I did a show not too long ago where we talked about just the dynamics of Black women in the workplace and moving up. How there's not Black women really running Fortune 500 companies. The numbers are very small. I think we had, when we have a guest on the show, like we had Thuru Vignaraja, who's a part of a large law firm. I went and I sat and looked through all the partners and everyone working for the law firms. There weren't a lot of Black women.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, I've been looking at a lot of the corporations that have grown during COVID, just reading a lot of stories about businesses. And what I tend to do is I go to the portfolio, the board, look at who's on the board and look at who's part of the company, who's running those companies. And again, what I typically find is there are always white men. There are always white men. There are always white women.
Mm-hmm.
There are sometimes more so than not a black man or some black men, but a lot of times there's not even a black woman anywhere in the leadership at all. You're going to see that more than you're not going to see a black man. And I know a lot of black men. I saw a comment recently, with a lot of the black female athletes, with Naomi Osaka coming out and talking about, her mental health and just not wanting to be stressed and withdrawing from some things. And I saw a black man say, well, now black women are starting to experience what we've experienced, which, I don't think that we never, I don't think that we never not experienced these things. I
Mm-hmm.
think we're speaking out more about it, but I really do think, of course, we've always been marginalized. We are the most marginalized group on the planet. So this is nothing new.
Mm-hmm.
But it is just very disheartening when it's another black woman behaving so badly. And and I would just talk to our viewers, anyone, if you are a black woman in any leadership, don't do it. Just have some self-respect and lead. That's
Right.
leadership, real leadership. If you're confident in your leadership, you don't have to talk to people a certain way. You don't have to do certain things to move up. You'll move up. But that doesn't seem to be the culture in Baltimore City. And Linda keeps getting out. She keeps cutting out, unfortunately. Linda, are you with us?
I
Yeah,
think
she's
it's
having
like
some connection
stalled.
issues. I shouldn't have named the names. Sorry.
But I think it definitely does start with accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing our worth and valuing ourselves
I
and
agree.
and dealing with our own trauma. I
Mm-hmm.
see so many people a lot of times, they walk around so angry, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to deal with that. I mean, even if something happened the day before, to be able to take that and to turn it into something new because God gave you that new day, and to move forward, we have to start doing that. Like I said earlier, I had to start checking myself,
Mm-hmm.
on my response and how I encountered other people.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you're dealing with somebody, that is offsetting, just kind of redirecting that conversation because a lot of us are dealing with trauma. I mean, as a black woman, we're supposed to be so strong right now, when you look at a lot of these marches, it's not the men, it's us.
Mm-hmm.
So we're supposed to carry an entire race of people and still be able to be nurturers to the children and then still have to go into the workplace and have to give not 100, but a 110% just to be recognized maybe for 70.
Right.
And they're going to give us more work. So, I mean, we have to deal in turn and just deal with ourselves individually. And before I think we can start really dealing with others, because a lot of us are like traumatized.
We have to learn self-care.
Mm-hmm.
We have to learn how to help ourselves, just like you said, do certain things personally, meditation, therapy, different things to, calm ourselves down. We have always been the glue and the backbone, and that thread is starting to shred. It is more tenuous than it's ever been because Black women as a whole are tired. We're tired of holding it down and being unappreciated, tired of holding it down with our men and being unappreciated, you know, um, always being the ones to sacrifice, but yet and still not getting the credit in the workplace and even outside of the workplace. And I haven't had the Baltimore experience, but I can tell you that when you go into the workplace and there are other Black women, automatically it doesn't have to even come from them, but they situate you in a way where they let you know, or they kind of want to make you feel that's your competitor. And if you don't pick up on that, if you don't follow through with that, then they have a problem. Well, why are you so comfortable with so and so? Why, are y'all good friends? Did you know them before they came here? You go to lunch, I mean, white people's insecurity and uncomfortability with us being close, it's so obvious, and they don't put any shade on it.
Right.
They let you know that that bothers them. So after a while, people don't want to be targeted, so they go off onto their own, you know,
Yeah,
and
I
stay
do
away.
believe the person that I referenced earlier,
Hmm.
and I do see quite often, particularly like in the legal field where you work around a lot of white men and you've been oppressed. I do believe that a lot of these, more, the older generation of Black women have taken on the characteristics of their oppressors, and they've absorbed that, and they've taken
Hmm.
that bad behavior on, and now they're lashing out, wherever they can, because they didn't have the courage to lash out against the white man, maybe that had done that to them for years. And so
Hmm.
they try to find someone, and I think towards the twilight of their career, find all the opportunity that they can, almost to, I don't know, unleash, I don't know, 40, 50 years, however old, of pain and aggression on somebody, which is pretty unfortunate. Linda, haven't had you for a while. Welcome back.
Well,
Did you
thank
want
you
to
so much.
add some more to this?
I have had some technical difficulties,
Yes.
but I've been listening with encouragement to the conversation, and just want to note that in addition to everything that has been stated, I mean, we're dealing with wage inequality and that
Yes.
type of issue that women face as compared to their male counterparts. We're also dealing with, at least in the Baltimore sector, a lot of the at will ism that
Hmm.
occurs when you have folks who are not supported by a union contract or a personnel system that
Hmm.
allows for rights. So when you're at will in Baltimore, that literally means to some folks that you can be arbitrarily, capriciously, and discriminatorily released from your position. And that's untrue. And
Hmm.
so I would encourage everybody who is an employee in Baltimore City, including but not limited to at will employees, to be very mindful that they are to be part of this groundswell that has to hold leadership accountable and city officials accountable for how they do business with people in the workplace. I mean, as long as we say this is the way it has been or nothing's going to change,
Hmm.
nothing will change.
I
You
agree.
know, clearly Rosa Parks didn't feel that way.
Hmm.
Clearly Sojourner Truth didn't feel that way, nor Harriet Tubman, nor for that instance, some of the Baltimore legends like Victorine Adams and Helena Hicks. We've got a rich history in Baltimore City of women warriors, women champions, women who did not succumb or acquiesce to the status quo. And in an environment, in a society where we as Black women are watching our Black men dwindle day by day, uh, because nobody seems to think it's a state of emergency with 300 Black men dying over the course of 10 years, approximately, by homicide. That's 3,000 times 3,000 over 10 years. If you look at the number who were shot but survived, that's perhaps another 15,000. Nobody seems to think but us or others like us that this is an important issue that we have to deal with. So we've got the workplace, the family, the loss of our males, our Black males, our brothers, our sisters, our fathers, our nephews, our cousins, our friends. And where or to whom or for whom is this important? Is it just important for us? It has to be important for everybody. But yet, when you see the topics that are hitting city council in terms of bills and the things that are important for the city, I see nothing that resonates around these cultural issues in a city where Blacks are diminishing over time. And it's clearly an intentional, I believe, an intentional gentrification by any means necessary, whether it's through infliction of us killing each other, or whether it's decimation by us allowing anybody to treat us any kind of way, including us normalizing those kinds of behaviors to say, oh, this is just the way it is. No, we should never tolerate an injustice as the way it is or as the way it should be. And I think the more you have conversations like this, and the more folks begin to understand their rights, because one of the things that I have found is that city agencies don't like folks telling them what their rights are. So when we tell taxpayers that Baltimore City receives federal funding and they have to they are obligated to treat Black people a certain way, to manage those funds in a certain way, to have a fiduciary responsibility to programs that support Black people and lift them up in a certain way. If we don't mandate that they do that and that they're held accountable for that, then they will continue to do that. And in a city that is still 60% Black, we should be demanding that.
Well, Ms. Betts, you are very familiar with the city's MBE program, and that is mandated, and it's gone to city council, passed, stamped, written, drafted, placed in the code, and they don't do anything to uplift the Black businesses in the city. You're aware of the equity issues just in contracting. So when we get this infrastructure money, or when we get the recovery rescue money, I see HBCUs doing something with the money and paying off student debt and paying, where they can move forward without debt. You see my Morehouse shirt on. When you do things like paying off the debt of men of Morehouse, you can move forward and do something. What is Baltimore City, like this city? We're going to talk about it because we're here now. What are they going to do with the money that's really going to empower where are we going to see where the money is going, and who is it really going to go to? They are still awarding contracts to people that have never used minority businesses, never paid them, and it was mandated. I don't trust that they're going to do the right thing with any of this money. I really don't.
So there's no transparency.
There is purported transparency.
Okay.
But which really amounts to what you're saying, no transparency.
Correct. It was a tagline, an election line, but no one has shown us any transparency. And by the time we see anything, it's going to be in the news when the Baltimore Brew or someone else breaks something down because someone has stolen some of that money. That's when we're going to get the transparency, when it comes from somewhere else.
And then the city has an issue with anyone to answer their MPIAs. They don't do it. They just, I think it's, in my personal opinion, I really think it needs to be some federal oversight. It really does. I mean, it's unfortunate, but I think that Baltimore City needs a federal babysitter.
Sounds like it.
Because it just sounds like it's a whole bunch of things going on. And it should start with the forensic audit. That's what I personally think. I mean, because you have employees, because technically, although they're management, they are still employees of the city. That's giving out violence. I mean, what is it? Horizontal violence? It's still violence, and the city could be sued. Right now, we're dealing with millions of dollars from the gun task force. I don't think they can take another hit right now.
Well, I think that's what it's going to take. It's going to take it's going to take this administration to have to pay for the behavior of some of their agency heads in order for things to change. As we're talking about Black women in leadership, they're going to have to pay.
Well, how do you get the federal government involved? I don't know. How does that happen? How does one go about doing that?
They have these whistleblowers that have been, they've
Okay.
already set it off. It looks like in the Brood, someone whistleblowed about, the water meters, and I want to hear more. I want to know,
Mhm.
where's the OIG on this? I have questions about my water bill.
Mhm.
I think people filing complaints, enough complaints going up the ladder. I think eventually they have no choice. And again, I know it may be unlawful. There's got to start being some type of documentation to support this behavior. And if it's documented, back in nursing, they would say if it's not documented, it's not done. So unfortunately, if they're playing nasty and violent, you're going to have to take some things into your own hands to get that evidence. And guess what? Those tapes leak, leak and get out there. And it's unfortunate that it may be, tightroping the law, but what else do you have? What other choice do you have?
You are
So
all
we
for reporting, Nicole.
Well, I mean, what, because think about it. If they're saying, oh, they're black and you're black too, it didn't happen. But is she calling you a BIT? We're just going to take a word, BITCH or something behind closed doors. How do you prove that?
Well, the likelihood is that if she called you that behind closed doors, she's called others that as well.
They wouldn't do it to me because I'm a little street. So I'm a little different.
I get it.
You know what I'm saying?
It wouldn't happen to me either. It wouldn't happen to me either. And so folks tend to pick their victims.
Definitely.
But the other piece is I have to go back to accountability. And in places where I've seen accountability work, this is completely anachronistic. I'm taken to another time and place. I cannot believe that leaders whose actions and whose failed oversight of agencies and programs and ratepayers' funds and taxpayers' funds are allowed to remain in position. I've never seen that happen in such other places. But the model that I've seen in Baltimore is one where that happens. And I wonder if it happens because if people are held accountable, then other people will have to tell their stories, which will lead to other unearthed secrets, which will create just a bigger groundswell. But we have to start somewhere. We have political leaders who need to be held accountable. We have people whom are voted in who need to be held accountable. Baltimore City, like any other city, receives federal funds, and the forensic audit is very important. Tracking the dollars, tracking who manages the dollars, and what the outcomes are. I think back to the riots after Martin Luther King's passing and the money that came to Baltimore that was supposed to result in improvements in the city. And I see those city streets looking the same way 30 and 40 years later as they did before the riots happened. And so, yes, follow the money. Where did the money go? And why didn't somebody think it was important enough to do an audit?
The comptroller's office does the auditor, city auditor.
I'm not talking about a city auditor. I'm talking about an external auditor.
That's what they tell the constituents. You and I know, Nicole knows, Nora knows, but most people, your average citizen hears, oh, they do an audit every 2 years for every agency. That sounds good, but really they don't realize those audits don't do anything. And the agencies kind of pick what they're being audited on.
Well, and that is why it is important to have more forums like this so that citizens can understand what's at stake and they can understand the extent to which they've been deprived of opportunities to really live vibrantly and to have a city that could have changed decades ago, but for mismanagement is still the way it is. And we've got to continue to educate. And one of the things that I found is that education and educating the public is not a priority of the city. Whenever there's a federal project, communities are supposed to be educated in advance on the project and given the tools so that they can understand what the impact is. And none of that happens. None of that ever happens. And I know it doesn't happen because I was a community advocate who blew the whistle on issues within Baltimore City where our community, a Black community, was treated differently, expressly, overtly, and intentionally treated differently than a white community. We have it documented. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it.
What was done about it?
Well, the issues were mitigated. The issues were mitigated, but the consequences still survive. The impact still survives. I mean, we've got a contract. We've got, Baltimore has these massive reservoir projects underway. We knew with the Clean Water Drinking Act, we knew 30 years ago that we were going to be doing these projects, that there were going to be billions of dollars coming into the city.
And
30
going
years
to New Jersey.
That's right. 30 years ago, we could have begun prepping our at-risk youth to become apprentice plumbers, to get businesses, to do this, to get that, so that 30 years later, they would be staged as business
for these
and
projects.
Entrepreneurs to benefit from this.
They're building prisons for them. They're not supposed to educate. They're rather build.
Yeah, they're not supposed to be building the infrastructure under the prison. They're supposed to be in the prison.
In the prisons, yeah.
So that is, right. And so we're going to see that again, and layers and layers and years later of that, and that money that you're talking about, that billions of dollars, goes to New Jersey contractors. White New Jersey contractors, for the most part, are the ones winning the contracts, and they're the ones that are paying our businesses that are in the city, our businesses that are employing us, our businesses that are going to the school drives and giving backpacks away. They don't do anything for the city. It all goes to New Jersey, and nobody does anything about it. It's one thing if it's going to a prime contractor in New Jersey. It's another thing when the subcontractor under is local, is Black, and the city still allows them to be mistreated. So what do you do?
Absolutely.
It is just. Absolutely. It is just.
They have to start filing some complaints. I mean,
some money's going in someone's pocket.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, first of all, I've never petitioned or anything with Baltimore City because my history with the city, it's just kind of like you just better go ahead and do it for yourself. I mean, I take my, my own trash. I bring my trash back to the county. You know what I mean? Because dealing with the city is hard work. But my thing is that they have to have some accountability to the taxpayers. They have to have accountability to the federal government. There needs to be a system. Somehow there's some agency that's out there that is listening that they have to be accountable to. I just can't believe that it's just, well, I do believe there's lawlessness. I believe. But my thing is that there has to be some accountability for this money. And we just have to find it. Because with this here, I know the whole focus for Baltimore City is downtown. Everything's downtown. Screw every other business unless you have a restaurant. They can care less. If you're not downtown, they don't care. You have to be downtown, have a restaurant,
or connected to the right person.
Or connected, and other than that, if you're not in any part of that, then you're out there on your own. So we've been out on our own. So I don't pay the city too much attention. But my thing is that they have to be accountable. If they're getting money from the federal government, if these programs that are coming in, especially for the MBE programs, they got to pay these people. Like there has to be a stop point at some point that people have to take that. And I guess people are so afraid. I don't know. Like, what is it that people don't exercise their rights? Because I'm gonna tell you, they do something to me, I'm slamming them. I'm coming. Mm-hmm. I'm going to call, and I'm going to be on the phone, and I don't know who I'm calling, but everybody. Anybody that's gonna listen.
And so,
Donald
permit
Trump.
me to say that
Said, really quickly, a viewer just said complaints are filed, they're ignored. Fake investigative reports are made public to the city. So
Fake reports. Wow. There you go.
I'm not complaining to the city. I'm going to the state, to the federal government. I don't even talk to them now about anything. Not even my water bill. I be wanting to call the state, ESTA. I be talking to all them. I don't even want to talk, because you talk to one person in the city, you get a completely different answer with the next person. You know what I mean? There's no continuity whatsoever. You know, they make up stuff as they go along. So that's what I'm saying. Like, what's the next level but to take it federal?
I don't know. Sounds like a project. Sounds like something that needs to be figured out.
yeah.
Well, I think it also sounds like there's an opportunity for us to have a conversation with our congressional constituents. They're close to the federal government and they're close to the city. They're right in between. They're talking about. Let's plan a conversation with them.
I think they're all connected and they're all part of the same network.
They may all be part of it, but absolutely. But I'd like to hear what they say on the record.
Yes. So I want to we're going to go over a few minutes because I just want to get back to the main subject of Black women, how Black women treat each other, and kind of just just get ready to wrap this up. But I did want to say that, in light of all of the diversity and inclusive gestures towards a lot of corporations towards improving equity and inclusion in corporations across the nation, it does seem like it's not going to get anywhere if us as Black women can't treat each other fairly. And I think we're kind of be left out of, they're going to have training for the white folks and just the different training on how we have to be equitable and fair. But who's going to talk to the Black woman about how she's treating another Black woman? I just think that's kind of going to miss that marker because the nation isn't really paying attention to that. And as Black women are going up that corporate ladder very slowly, but we are getting there. Who's going to address that? And I don't know that this is a question anybody can answer, but
I think we need to address it individually. Yeah. I think each person, especially, I don't care what sorority you may belong to, what organization you belong to. I think individually, like I have to check myself, and I've done it. I've checked myself, on how I've responded to other Black women. And we have to do that because we have to deal with our own trauma, before we're ready to deal with other people. So I think it starts with us, no matter what level of life we're in. Just because we have education does not make us better. Like, I've seen so many of us look down on another one of us because we may not have walked in that sister's shoes. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that to me is just the worst. And I hear it. Where people be like, oh, I'm a doctor or I have this. I'm like, well, I have a master's too, but I'm out here slinging this freight because it's mine. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So we have to get out of this mindset that because we become classism too, and we have to stop that, because at the end of the day, I think Jay-Z said it best. How they look at us, we still gonna be. Still, I don't care if you could be a doctor, you could be a lawyer. Hell, they used to love OJ. Now they will hang OJ from a tree if they could.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will tell everyone out there, and this is how I keep myself level, regardless of what degree I have. There's somebody that has more. There's always somebody that has more money. There's always somebody that has more businesses. There's always somebody that has more experience. There's always somebody that's going to have more. You have to humble yourself and recognize that, and just don't throw that. Nobody's better than anybody. I actually go out of my way, from that instance, than to treat somebody different. I actually treat people different when I think they expect me to treat them less. I really treat them so much better. I go out of my way. So just remember that if anybody on here starts losing yourself, just remember there's somebody out there that's always has more. So who are you? And just to treat people fair, particularly Black women. That's because we are all Black women, and we can say, okay, maybe it's like that in the white community. Maybe white women are like that with each other. We don't know. I don't really care because that doesn't affect me. It
Right.
matters to me how we are all treating each other. And I had to remove myself from a discussion. I think, Nicole, we were at an event at one time long ago, and I found negative discussion about another Black woman that I didn't know, and I have to really actively remove myself from that. And so, well, that's just my closing comments. Nicole, Miss Mitchell, I will let
Uh-huh.
you give your closing comments. We'll let Ms. Batts give her
Okay.
closing comments. Thank you all so much for being on here, and then I'll have Nicole wrap everything up.
Okay.
We can go on
Well,
another hour.
my closing comment is that you guys give me hope. Your consciousness and your intellect and the way that you express the things and the knowledge that you have tells me that the fight is not over. It's just begun. I mean, you guys are of another generation, but you bring so much to the table. Your experience and where your heart is. It really lifts me up. And so therefore, even though there's a lot going on, especially what you're talking about in Baltimore and even across the nation in other, urban areas and things like that, but people like you are going to be the ones to make the difference. And also people like Miss Batts. That's it.
Well,
Thank you.
I thank you all. I am particularly honored to have been in the company of such noble and smart women. And I look forward to building upon this platform of conversation and potential action and advocacy that I think can come as a result of this conversation today. I say, let's continue to meet, let's continue to talk, and let's continue to pollinate what we've talked about across the city and encourage and inspire others to lift their voices and to be courageous and to join in with us to demand the excellence that we deserve, not only as humans, but as taxpayers, as ratepayers, and as citizens of a city that will soon collapse under its own weight if something doesn't change.
Linda, what are you running for office? Where are you in the seventh? There's a nice seat for you at that table because we need you, Miss Batts.
I was thinking the
Wow.
same thing.
I am here in my purpose to be supportive wherever I am needed.
Well, you are
But I
needed on a ticket because we got to get rid of these shysters. Please.
Yes, we do. We do. But in anticipation of whatever that ticket might be, I think we have an opportunity to do something good. And we need to figure out what that is, create it, and spread it. And just, fostering, letting folks know, for example, that they have a place where they can turn if they want to get objective advice about how to deal with an issue in the workplace, in the city. That's a good starting point, because the more people who come together to talk about these issues and the more we can coalesce, the more we can pick out the strength of those who can mediate some of these issues, educate, represent others in some of these issues, and just be mutually supportive, just in terms of our own discussion and conversation and call to action. Today is a call to action. This evening is a call to action. And I thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of it.
Thank you so much, both of you. Thank you so much.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Nicole.
Woo, sisters. I mean, I love, I love being Black, number one. I don't think it's anything, I don't know about anything else. So I love being Black. And I encourage everyone for self accountability, and to start checking ourselves. If you walk down the street, you pass somebody, and you, for whatever reason, don't want to speak, check yourself, because that's another human being and possibly another sister. Put yourself in that person's shoes, because remember, what you dish out may not come back on you, but it come back on your kids, because this world is full circle and it comes back, And I tell people all the time, it was a Black woman that saved my life. She, no relation whatsoever. She was a school teacher. You understand? And she pulled me to the side and she said, "Child, you're going down the wrong path." And she saved my life, took me to the side. She was my gym teacher. So I will forever be indebted, not just to my mother, because she had me, but to this woman that took the time that makes sure that I got the credit that I needed to graduate from high school when I was expelled. So we are powerful when we reach back, and we are a loving and forgiving race. So I expect our sisters in all environments to treat each other with self-respect. So I love my sisters, and just definitely hold yourself accountable. Check yourself. If you have ill thoughts about somebody, you need to question yourself why that is, because especially if they've done nothing to you. You understand? So just checking ourselves and loving ourselves is I think is what it is, you know, and I had to get in tune with myself on that. So I'm 100% raised. I love people and I love my sisters. Now, you come in there and you get wrong in the store, I'm gonna get you right. But you know, but you know, peace, you know, because I'm all for the peace, you know, but I let people know when they're wrong. But I just think that we have to start holding ourselves accountable. So that's all I have. It's been beautiful.
Absolutely.
It's been nice to meet and talk with you, Miss Batts and Miss Mitchell. I look forward to future conversations, and of course, Tamara.
Yes,
We
we're
have
gonna
work
do
to
this
do.
again. We're gonna do
It's
this
beautiful.
again. We're gonna get a bigger panel. We're gonna talk more. We're gonna have a show with white women. We're gonna talk about that and some of the privilege. And you know, we really want to talk about a lot of issues that we face as Black women. And I want to get a lot of input from different areas. We're gonna have a show with Black men talking about it. So we're gonna get into a lot of these areas. Thank you again, ladies. This has
Okay.
been Sistabiz. We're back. We went a little over, but look. Black women. The show is about you for true today. There's a lot of Black women running agencies in Baltimore City, so we had to get into that. But Black women, love yourself, love other Black women, because when you're not loving another Black woman, you're not loving yourself. You know, so if
Mhm.
you love yourself, love each other. There's no reason not to. And like Nicole said, check yourself. If you have to ask yourself, why is it that I don't like or want to deal with this woman, then you ought to check yourself. So thank you for joining us on BlackUSA.news. Donnie is back with his morning show. Get that book, the Black Wall Street. When we were all hanging in there together and doing a lot of hard work, he's done some of his journalism about that. So you guys, thank you so much for joining us again. We'll see you guys next week. Another thing I want to say, I had an aunt pass this week of COVID. We weren't going to do the show, but I wanted to do it because she really watched the show every week and supported our show. And I can say that I just ask everyone to get vaccinated. You know, I can't, for whatever reason, some people don't want to, but I can tell you that it can make a difference. So when you lose someone, this first family member I've lost that wasn't vaccinated, it's very moving and it's very difficult. So please take care of yourself out there and be safe. And if
Okay.
you can't find a real reason, do your research, but please get vaccinated.
Yes. You have my condolences.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night, ladies. Good night.